Hello and welcome to another episode of Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged. Here at Talksicology, we talk all things addiction, recovery, and mental health. Tonight's guest, legendary music manager, Doc McGhee. I'm your co-host, Jason Cabello, and as always, your host and mine, Joseph Gorordo.
Hey! Hey, everybody. Welcome to what is being referred to as the greatest episode of the greatest Thursday night addiction mental health recovery podcast in existence.
Wow.
Did you see that on the Twitter? Twitter's going crazy saying that this is going to be the greatest episode ever.
Yeah. It's definitely the most popular podcast on my mother's feed and probably the fifth most popular in my household.
What's the most popular podcast in your household, Jason?
Oh man, I would say it's a skateboarding one. Big surprise. It's the 9 Club is probably my favorite, and then I also like Smartless is pretty funny.
Smartless is great. I love
it's weird, like when you realize that your Spotify, all the suggestions are just podcasts now instead of music. I'm starting to feel like kind of like, am I that guy now? Like,
I think about that sometimes. I think about
do you?
That. Yeah, I do. I listen to mostly podcasts in my car every once in a while. Today I was getting down to some Dr. Dog, though. Remember Dr. Dog?
Dr. Dog is great. Yeah, Dr. Dog is great.
They've got a line in one of their songs, and I don't know the name of the song, but it says, he says, "I hate when people say those were the days. So what are these then?" And I'm like, I like that,
Wow, that's a thinker. That's a real thinker. I like it.
But I was actually listening to it in the car on my way home right now to do the show, and that line came on, and I turned and I looked at Jackson, and I was like, "Remember when he was 10?" Remember
Jackson
this.
is your son, and you guys
yes,
are
my
just
son
home from baseball.
Yeah, absolutely. We got a lot of people tuning in tonight who are just shouting out where they're from. Jason, I'm telling you, it's the greatest episode ever. We got Ohio. We got Alaska.
Don't jinx it.
No, I'm owning it. I'm stepping into my power here, Jason. Galveston, Texas. Clearwater, Florida. Another Florida. St. Paul. Hey, Jason's mom. St. Paul, Minnesota. Hi, Nancy. Hey, Tucson. All right, cool. Well, welcome to the show, guys. If it's your first time here, thank you for joining us. We love a lot of interaction. Please feel free in the chat to talk with Greg, who's behind the scenes, running the ones and twos, as the kids say.
The
nowadays. The GOAT, Greg
MVP.
Roselle. And to our returning guests, thank you for coming back. As always, I hate to be super promoty, but like, share, and follow. Help us get the word out. We share valuable information and experiences here that we think help people, somehow along that path, right?
And if it is your first time, listening, Dan from New York City, I think I know who that is. I think that's my nephew. We're hitting it if my nephew's watching it, because he's like super cool kid. So
if he lives in New York City, man, he's trendy. Yeah.
But if you are new to the show, we do talk about addiction, mental health, recovery. And we talk about some pretty serious stuff, but we like to keep it a little bit lighthearted. We like to chuckle.
Absolutely.
We like to laugh.
Absolutely, and we like to keep it current too. We like to talk about what we're watching, what we're consuming. What information we're putting into our body, whether it's music, TV, and other things. Do you think we should
radio and film? Flawless.
Oh, love that. Love it. So I don't know what Greg's got queued up, but Jason, let's start with what's your thing? What you've been consuming lately?
Well, what I've been consuming lately, I haven't really been consuming anything new and exciting, but I would like to talk about the decriminalization of marijuana. That's been a pretty hot topic.
Ooh.
And I know that you, Joseph, you are way better versed at this stuff than I am about like the difference between legalization and decriminalization.
Yeah.
Can you chime in on that a little?
Absolutely. I like to explain it to people. First off, I'd like to say totally in favor of decriminalization and legalization of marijuana in all states federally. Let's go for it. But we can that's a black hole that we can dig into some other time. But think of it this way. Parking ticket, right? You park somewhere you're not supposed to park. You park in a fire zone, right? You're not going to get arrested. You could do it every day for the rest of your life and not get arrested, right? Because it's not a crime. But it's not legal either. So basically, decriminalizing marijuana means that you could still get in trouble for it. Maybe get a ticket, maybe get a citation. There may be some restrictions on like amounts and things like that you can have on you. But people won't be going to jail anymore for long periods of time.
That's good.
And one thing that's important about decriminalization to think about too is most drug laws and the drug war in general has disproportionately affected Black and brown youth, right? Black and brown men, to be specific. Things like the 3-strike rule. In some states there are 3-strike rules where if you get caught with a minimal amount of pot 3 times and found guilty 3 times, you're gone. And so I'd like to see that stop happening.
Yeah. Now, are any of the laws like retroactive? Is it gonna like people who have maybe even say recently been arrested for a crime involving marijuana, like exclusively, that they might get?
So I'm not a legal expert, but my understanding is if you haven't been convicted yet, it would go away. Because there's nothing to convict you on anymore. And I do know that there are advocates in some of the states where it has been legalized, California, Colorado, etc., where there are attorneys who specialize in going back and trying to get people reduced sentences or completely let off because they had minor nonviolent drug charges on their records. Yeah. So So those of you who are in recovery who have trouble finding a job, this could be a good thing for you, potentially.
Yeah. All right. Now I know you had a clip from something that you had watched.
I do. I like to keep it current, so I like to stay on the TikTok. And of course, on the TikTok, how do I keep it current? By following the TikTok of 90s sitcom star Mayim Bialik. That for those of y'all that don't know, she played Blossom. And in the early 90s, Blossom was the epitome of fashion.
Do you remember the theme song?
Oh my God. If you gave me
I'll give you $50 if you could remember the first line from it.
If you gave me the first line, I could
know about the future. It's anybody's guess. Okay. Anyway.
No, I remember Joey Lawrence. What was his?
Whoa.
Remember Joey? Whoa. Yeah. Anyway,
that was it.
Greg, roll the clip, please.
One of the things that I've learned is that when you put down the thing, then you find out why you were picking up the thing, So like the expression, like, if you want to find out why you're using, stop using. That's true of food. It's true of alcohol. It's true of sex. It's true of pot. It's true of other narcotics, but it's also true of obsessing, controlling, codependency, seeking validation. So what happens is when we stop doing that thing, like, we're left just with us.
Oh,
that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean,
that's really good.
You like me have sat through hundreds, if not thousands of hours of 12-step meetings and therapy sessions and self-help groups. Yeah. And I had never heard it framed that way. And I saw it last week and I've been thinking about it ever since, because everything we do for a reason, right? So if there's something unhealthy that you're doing in your life, stop doing it, and then you'll understand what the reason is.
So I'm dealing with. I know I've mentioned it on pretty much every show that I have a friend, an old friend from back in Miami, whose kid, he keeps on trying to get his kid into treatment. Then the kid will AMA, which means he will just leave, and then
for Norm in Wisconsin.
For Norm, the normie in Wisconsin, and then And he doesn't understand why his parents get so mad at him, because they'll be like, he'll leave treatment and then he'll be like, but I only took like one Vicodin, and it's not like I'm shooting up or doing this. And it's like, yeah, that's great. However, you probably have some agreement with your parents, and the only thing they're asking you to not do is drugs anymore. And then it's like you leave and then you're doing drugs again, and wondering why it's like this cycle. It's like the only way to get off the merry-go-round is to get off the merry-go-round and then figure everything else out. I think that's why the whole first step thing is so important, is just admitting you have a problem, and then and then taking the next step. So
well, even like when you look at the steps, right, the only step that mentions alcohol or drugs is step 1, right? Because that's like the biggest symptom of the problem. But then all that other stuff that we deal with in the rest of the 12 steps is all wreckage of your past, character defects, all these things that we push down with alcohol and drugs.
Yeah, I remember when I was like, when I was finally like okay with quitting drugs, and then I realized that I had to do all this other shit too, and then I couldn't do drugs anymore to deal with it. That really fucked me up for a while. But and
I mean,
it worked.
how do you celebrate?
How
do you celebrate? How do you mourn? Like, how do you?
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
Seriously, no, that is. I had a big issue because I've been going to see live music since I was a kid, and then working in nightclubs and everything since I was a teenager, and always had a beer in my hand or a drink in my hand or doing something else. So getting back into that, and like it felt like dancing at first. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I'd go to a show and I would just sit there and be like, I didn't know, and I could only drink so many Topo Chicos. It was. Do you remember the first show that you went to in your recovery?
The first show that I went to in recovery, it was either The Tallest Man on Earth at the old Emos here in Austin, or I think more likely it was something called the Railroad Revival Tour, and it was Mumford & Sons, Old Crow Medicine Show, and Edward Sharpe.
Oh, they're good.
Zeros. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Old Crow Medicine Show did a great cocaine song.
Yeah. Well, you know what? One of the founding members is in recovery.
Really? That's cool.
Yeah. And I have a really cool story about that I don't think I'm allowed to share publicly because it's not my story. But
yeah, and you just you couldn't just say this musician that I know. You just kind of told everybody who he is. So we'll save it for another day. And M2 Feathers just asked how long we've been in recovery. So I am coming up on 6 years, in about a month and a half. Joseph.
Yeah, and I will have 14 years in July 21st. And you know what's kind of cool? So today, for my work, I got to go visit a treatment center here in Texas, to go network and whatnot. And one of the guys who was working there was actually the same gentleman that did my pre-screening on July 20th, 2008, right before I went to treatment.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Pretty cool.
Tina Marie said she's celebrating 10 months sober. Hell yeah, Tina.
Wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And
those of y'all, real quick, I know you want to get to the guests, but I just want to say to everybody in the chat who is asking about sober time and stuff, length of sobriety does not indicate quality of sobriety. So if you've got 5 days or 30 days or 60 days, like, rock on. Like,
yeah.
It's beautiful.
You can do it. Yeah. So we tonight's guest, and you know what? I'm sorry, I'm going to sidebar here for a second. I really hate when people say this guest needs no introduction, because you have to introduce the guest, or else, Yeah. Anyway, so tonight's guest, if you're a fan of rock and roll music, if you've listened to Motley Crue, Bon Jovi, Hootie and the Blowfish, Kiss, this man's work has touched your life. He is a legendary music manager, and the first guest that is prompting me to say that the views and opinions stated on Talksicology are not those of Recovery Unplugged. Ladies and gentlemen, Doc McGhee.
There you go. You got all the applause in the world. There you go.
Oh man! Hey, the whole room. You got the whole room clapping. Yeah,
yeah, 100%. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing fantastic, and I love listening to you guys talk about your recovery and sharing your stories with everyone. It's I'm sure it's helpful to me and everyone.
Yeah. So thanks. Joseph and Doc have been on a panel before. I know they met a few years back in Nashville that we had all went to, and shout out to Naomi Fabricant who put that together, who was one of Recovery Unplugged's VPs at the time, who actually got me into treatment. And I owe her my entire life, because I wouldn't have gone to treatment if it weren't for Naomi at that moment. So thank you, Naomi.
Yeah. And let's plug Naomi. So now she runs or does some. She's very important within the Scars Foundation.
Foundation
is some of the members of Godsmack started a foundation to help people with addiction and recovery stuff. So shout out.
Right.
Absolutely.
Shout out to Naomi. So Doc, what have you been up to lately?
Well, just trying to get back into it with KISS. We're trying to finish the end of the road tour finally after 3 years. So we started,
this is the last tour.
Yeah, this has been. We started in 19, and now we're postponed 180 shows. So now we're doing makeup shows and trying to fit it in with everyone else to try to get our shows, underway.
So let me ask you, Doc. We've talked a lot about how COVID has impacted people, this 2-year pause that we all went on. But I'd love to hear about, someone who's involved in the live music entertainment industry that we all miss so much. Like, how did it impact y'all?
Well, in some ways it was kind of like a gift, believe it or not, because we don't get a chance to be at home.
Yeah.
Our life is about travel, is about doing shows around the world. Okay. And so for us to be able to spend this time with our families, and it's the opposite of what's happened to most families that are out there. But for us, and what I've seen from the entertainment side of it, is that people have gotten a lot closer to their families and got to spend more time with them. So it was really a good thing in a lot of ways for us. It's a terrible thing for the entertainment business, and the people that work in the entertainment business, and how many people lost their jobs or relocated the way that they are going to live the rest of their lives. I think though it really gave, and not just the entertainment business, but all of us, it gave people a reset button to say, is this what I want to do? You know what I mean? I've been on
kind of like force you to kind of prioritize and look at where you're putting your energy, right?
I've been on this treadmill, and I'm moving down this treadmill, and I never get off the treadmill. I'm always on this treadmill, and then all of a sudden there's no treadmill. And so you sit there and you go, well, what's important to me now? You know what I mean? And so after you spend a year or two doing this, and you start saying, you start thinking differently a little bit about, and that's why people have left their jobs and have moved on to different things, because they've thought the idea of what they want to do in their life or what's important to them in their life, and they move forward with it. Whether it's recovery, whether it's, you see a lot of people, there's a lot more people that have been in recovery in the last couple of years than anybody can, it's really a fact.
Well, we can verify that, last year was Recovery Unplugged's busiest year on record, which beautiful that we're helping people, but also like indicative of some deeper suffering going on for a lot of folks, right?
Well, you listen, it's not like you have a choice to do drugs when you start. Okay.
Yeah.
After that, you don't have a choice.
Right.
It's a dependency. It's your way of life. It's a whole, it's a trying to get better or trying to not feel like this. It's no longer, am I having fun doing this? There's, you've all been there. Okay. It's not like, oh, well, I'm not having fun, so I won't do this anymore. That's something you're sick. Your whole physical being is about trying to not feel this way. Pretty much that's it.
Absolutely.
And you live your life that way, and you give up anything to do that. And so I think now is when people started to say, I'm at this crossroads to where maybe I can get help before I start this new section of my life. I can, let me shut my phone off here. Sorry.
Is that Gene Simmons?
No, it actually was a guy I'm playing golf with tomorrow. So. It's not.
Oh, that's the priorities, right? The priorities of
I was just saying it'd be worse if it was Gene, but it's so I think that a lot of that comes from, us all thinking, hey, we're gonna, in this pandemic thing, you go, okay, I'm here. I'm going to change. I want to change my life. I want to change what I'm doing. And now I have an opportunity that I'm down. I don't have to worry about going to do something because I can't, you know what I mean? And so now this could be the perfect time for me to try to get my shit together for my next thing I want to do. And try to get help, while I'm not doing anything,
Yeah.
And I think, and so we've seen a huge uptick in people going to get help, and which is awesome.
So we did that panel together, which I think is probably a bigger memory for me than it is for you. But we did that panel. I guess it would have been 2019.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
2019.
2019.
And it was my first time in Nashville, and we were at some fancy hotel at this music industry conference. And one thing that I thought was really special about that panel was, they stuck us in a little small room in the back because nobody thought the recovery panel would be very interesting, and we ended up packing out that room.
Yeah.
And
completely packed.
And afterwards, I don't know if you remember, but all these people came up to us. Like there was people who were like in tears, who were so grateful to hear about personal recovery, to hear about good folks like you who are supporting, trying to help other people get into treatment. And it was such a cool experience because I talked to a lot of recovery folks who hear about it and talk about it all the time. But that gave us an opportunity to speak to, normal people about recovery.
Well, a little bit, a little bit normal, but
normal-ish, right? It's still the music industry, right?
But Andrew just said, Andrew is one of the co-founders of Recovery Unplugged. There's a standing room only at the end of the panel, and I remember the line was like out the door just to talk to each and every one of you on the panel, because and there was not a dry eye in the house. People were crying and saying like, I didn't know this existed. This place is wonderful. I remember some lady saying that she wishes that I think it was her brother, wishing that her brother would have found this place before it was too late for him. But that was a great panel.
Yeah. And they said you should come back next year, but next year never happened. But Doc, you kind of touched on a little bit earlier, right? Like how, alcoholics and addicts, we hit this point where it's not about party, it's not about fun, it's survival instincts, right? And a lot of the folks that you've helped have been big famous musicians with all the money, the fame, women, cars, all the things that we think we want, all the things that we say will make us happy. So would you talk some about, without naming names, of course, but when you're managing these guys, what is the stuff that you see where you're like, okay, it's time, this person needs to go? How do you know when they've crossed that line?
It was very hard for me because in the 70s and late 70s and 80s, I was probably pretty much an enabler in a lot of this. And I played a lot of part in it because, I blamed it on the culture. I blamed it on everybody's doing it. Everybody's, I was fortunate enough to be able to function through most of it, or most of it, or probably all of it, where a lot of people couldn't, and fell to the wayside. But it's not about, the hardest thing is like David Lee Roth said in the 1982 or 83 in Rolling Stones, because I said it to John Bon Jovi. I said, because I was talking about a rock star. Okay, so I showed Journey in People magazine, and they were in their BMW with their dog talking about being a rock star. And then you had David Lee Roth sitting on a bed with a pizza on the floor in his underwear with like 3 girls half naked laying on the bed. And the caption was, "I used to have a drug problem, but now I can afford it."
Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So that was that era, right? So
that was the culture, right? Like culture, whatever, right?
And if you could afford it, because yet everything we do in society is a lie, pretty much. Everybody gets to lie to everybody to get them to do things. Okay. So when you listen to these people, you think, well, David Lee Roth said, this person thinks it's cool, that person, and maybe it is cool for people to do some things, but the other side of it gets so out there away from what they're talking about that it is just a lie. It is people trying to convince you that this is the way to go, and that is not the case. And so I just saw this ask the question if Motley Crue is still clean and sober. Well, Nikki's clean and sober. Okay. I know that for a fact. I detoxed Nikki in my house.
Ooh, tell us about that.
I carried him in and out of a hot tub with him and his girlfriend in my house because he wouldn't go to recovery.
Yeah.
And I had doctors on the phone, and I had everybody for a week, and it was ugly. And it's really ugly.
Yeah.
Well, you've all been through it. I don't have to tell you. It's not a scare tactic.
I've been there. It's not fun. But it takes someone with a lot of compassion and empathy and love, right? If I'm not being too mushy, to sit with an alcoholic or an addict through a detox.
I think you have to do it. It's not about people that you're a genius. You want to. The idea is people are having severe problems in coping and dealing with their lives, and are going to die. That's really the truth.
Absolutely.
That's not anything. Taylor Hawkins died 50 years. He's 50 years old with 3 kids. Had 10 drugs in the system. I talked to him 5 days before he left because I was putting him on the Kiss cruise with Chevy Metal, his band. Okay. So they were going to be on the Kiss cruise, and I was putting them up to where him and his wife could stay with us in the Haven, which is up on top of the boat. And the nicest kid in the world. And somebody said to me, "Well, how the fuck did he die?" I go, "Let's see. He's in Bogota." Okay. Listen, probably not the best spot for somebody that's had a drug problem to be in. But and to see that type of reaction after somebody that's been through, like Nikki, Nikki had died.
Yeah.
I quit. Okay. I tore their contracts up. I stopped them from going to Europe. I canceled the whole tour because I wasn't going to watch these people die. I had made up my mind that my artist wasn't going to die. I was going to walk in, and believe me, I thought any day I could walk into a hotel room and one of them would be dead. That's the truth.
Well, and the truth is, there's millions of Americans who are living in that fear right now.
Absolutely.
Right? That their husband, their kid, their daughter, that one day they're going to wake up and see him or get the phone call.
I know. So, and I watch it every day. Because listen, I'm in the entertainment business. I see this shit every day. Okay. And, now I'm sober. Okay. 6 years. Okay.
Right on. 6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. In July, it'll be 6 years. And that was my choice.
We're sober month buddies.
Yeah. So
yeah, me too. All three of us.
July 4th.
Yeah.
We'll have to have a party.
July 4th. But but I don't have the stories. Like, I hung out.
I'm sure you got a couple.
I did a lot of I did a lot of blow and all that kind of stuff. But and the usual stuff in the 70s and stuff like that. But yet I just quit drinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just quit. I didn't go to although I talk to recovery almost every day. I talk to people.
Yeah.
Because they're in my business and they're friends of mine. And so, they're either in meetings or calling me or something, or the guys I play golf with down here, they're all in recovery, and they're 60 years old, 65 years old. And a couple of them have been in 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
In recovery. One of my best friends down here, he's been 11 years, and it was after his son died on heroin. Okay. And he was a junkie. Wow. And so he's got that story, but, luckily I haven't had the horror story in my life, that these people have had to change. But it's only about addiction, and it's not just drugs, it's whatever you're into or whatever it is. But it's basically about you have a problem when you don't know what the outcome is going to be when you start this shit. Okay. That's really your sign of saying something's got to change here, So it's
like the in 12-step programs, we call it the spiritual. Hold on. Oh my God. Did I really just lose this? Jason.
I don't know. I can't read your mind.
You have a physical allergy. A physical allergy. It's the physical allergy. Once I take a drink, right, I don't know when I want to stop. Or Mark Houston used to say, I take the drink and then the drink takes me.
Yes. Yeah. And when you don't know what the outcome's going to be, when you get through this, there's problems, whether it's drinking, whether it's drugs, whether it's anything else. I just watched, you're talking about watching something. I just watched Michael Keaton and Dope Sick.
Oh,
crazy.
Powerful.
Well, I lived through this. I mean, I've seen this. I've seen this movie.
Yeah.
So that's how that's how this show got started. It was a round table live stream discussing Dope Sick. Yeah. And then B, I was in Broward County, Florida during the whole pill mill thing, and I could go up and down the street and go to like 5 doctors and just get as many. I mean, you could get oxys on the street at that time, like 30 milligram oxys for like $5. And that was just insane. It was like the Wild West. Yeah. And most of the people that I used with, I got lucky. Most of the people that I used with are not here anymore. There's a handful of us that got clean. But the majority of, everybody, it was in my mom's neighborhood too, Doc, who my mom, so many people in that neighborhood are gone. And it was like within like 5 years, like most of the people that I knew out there just weren't around anymore.
Yeah. Well, that's, so when you see what it does to people, you think you would go, and the normal person would say, well, Jesus, you just can't do that stuff. But it's not about that. You know what I mean? It's not about like you really want to do this anymore. Nobody really wants to be in that situation. They just can't get out of the situation. They don't have a way to break away from that situation. That's the biggest part.
Well, my mind goes straight to another big book thing, where it says like, the normal person looks at the true alcoholic and thinks, he'd surely quit for her. She's such a lovely girl. Or, he'll lose everything if he gets another DWI. Or, I think a lot of people don't realize that, right? Addiction's not like a rational thing. It's not a moral thing. Right. It's like telling somebody who has cancer, like, well, why don't you just stop having cancer?
Well, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it. So
it's clearly bad for you. Stop having it.
But what I liked about one of the parts I liked about the dope stick thing with Michael Keaton was that Michael Keaton was not into opioids and not into prescribing them and not into any part of them until he was told the lie that it wasn't addictive and that you couldn't get hooked on it. And the next thing you know, this guy's hooked on it. So he fell into the lie, okay, and he fell into all, like everybody that gets into it, you know what I mean, and all your friends lie to you and everything else because they want you to be with them. You know, that's really it's a community, you know.
So I'm thinking about like celebrities again, right? You know, and folks that you've tried to get into treatment or actually gotten into treatment. You know, I'm sure they were surrounded by a whole ton of people who really didn't want them to get sober for whatever reason. I mean, that's my assumption. I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right because they weren't sober. Yeah. Okay. So, and most of them didn't get sober because they were getting sober for us, not for them. Okay. So every time they would go to a rehab, it would be because there was an intervention or they were going to lose a contract or they were going to lose this or they were going to lose something. So they went, okay, fuck it. I'll go in for 30 days. And they'd go into Promises or some place that they could spend $50,000 or whatever and go to meetings and stuff like that. And then they get out and within 6 months, pretty much back to normal. Okay. And until they
back to normal in that they're back using the way they were before, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
And the problem on the heroin side is, you know, those people that lay off for 6 months or 5 months or 3 months or a month, they don't have the tolerance of what they used to do. So when they come out, right, they want to get, it's the craziest thing because like a lot of the people that I would work with that were heroin addicts, I never did heroin, but were heroin addicts, would say, oh man, when one of my friends would OD and, you know, have to go to the hospital or die, we try to find his dealer because we knew
we've talked about that on this show.
Yes, sir.
That phenomenon of like my buddy almost died.
I gotta
call that guy. Yeah, I gotta find that guy. And which, like, you know, we laugh about it, but that's like another one of like these, you know, when we say addiction is not rational or logical, right? That's part of it, right?
Yeah. Like, right, absolutely.
That guy almost died. Sounds like a good time. That's not normal, right?
No, but yeah, and it's where you want to. It's whatever you want to be. The problem with the drug addiction is that I have never met anybody that said, hey man, I'm just happy being a junkie. I like, you know, I know I have people that say, hey, I like to smoke and I'm going to smoke. Okay. I just like to smoke. I really enjoy it. Okay. They're not hurting anybody. They're hurting themselves, obviously, but they're not, they work their jobs and they do their stuff, but they just like to smoke. Okay. I don't know anybody that is addicted that likes to be addicted. I never met anybody that liked to be addicted.
I mean, not if they're being honest with themselves.
No, not if they're being honest with themselves, because every day they wake up to not feel sick. That's all.
So we talked a little bit about, you know, man, the late 70s, early 80s party culture.
Yeah.
Right. You know, cocaine flowing like water, whatever. Yeah. And then I think in the 90s is really when we started to see a lot of tragic deaths, you know, a lot of, you know, Kurt Cobain, Lane Staley, the guy from Snot, Lynn from Snot, all these great artists, you know, and when I look at music today from the outside looking in, it seems like the music industry has really shifted past a lot of that, like excess nihilistic, you know. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Well, yeah, I think
they just not celebrate it as much, or
it's not celebrated as much. Nothing is. You have to remember, all those things were really before the internet.
Yeah.
Really before everybody had cell phones that could take pictures and record stuff and do things, and so you had a lot of freedom that you don't have today. Okay, and you have a lot more knowledge of things for today, and a lot of people will. I mean, I think that there's probably more drug use today than there was even then.
Really?
Because I maybe yes, because I think it's a lot more tragic in the last 5 or 10 years. There's more people dying of the fentanyl drug and everything else. And I was talking to one guy, and he was telling me about how one of the people in his session was talking about how they went and got fentanyl patches from pets, that they had this pet thing that you could get a patch for your pet, had fentanyl in it.
Okay.
And you could get patches, and the kid figured out how to rip the patch apart and scrape it out and cook it down and shoot the fentanyl from dog. I mean, that's a lot of work. You got
you got to freeze it first.
That's a lot of shit to do to get into it. I think it's recreational in the 70s and 80s. It was kind of like a party kind of thing, because there was a lot of blow.
Comeback Recovery said patches for pooches.
Patches for pooches. There you go.
Shout out to Tony Trevino and Comeback Recovery.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, though, I'm thinking back to earlier when we were like, no one's addicted who's really enjoying it. And like, if you're getting black market pet patches and going through some crazy chemistry, like, that's not a party anymore. That is not a good time.
No, that's a way of life. That's something that you want to. I mean, you're trying to get, because you can't. It's very hard for people to function and stuff on the thing to begin with, so they don't have a life, and it really gets. And if you're not that person, you will become that person. That's the problem. Okay, it's not like you go, well, that's not going to happen to me, because I think everybody who got into this said that.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the deception. That's the big lie, right?
Yeah, that's the lie again.
Not me. Here's how.
No, it's not me. And the next thing you know, and how many of my friends lost their kids? Okay, to this stuff. And
Doc, if we could go back to, say, the 70s and 80s, when it was a lot more acceptable, especially in the industry that you're in, right? It wasn't a big deal. Do you remember when you said, like, this might not be sustainable or good for business? Like, I don't think this is working for everybody.
Well, again, I could only relate to what was happening to me. Okay. And my world was crumbling because Nicky was crawling around his yard with a shotgun, thinking that he saw, he had window duty half the night. Okay. So he was up thinking that people were coming into his house. And, and Tommy was not far behind him. And, and just the whole culture with Guns N' Roses and Hanoi Rocks and Vince killing 2 kids and all that, it's just, it got to be to where it wasn't fun. Yeah. I mean, the lie was, it was over as far as I was concerned, because I had to try to make some semblance. And do I think that Nicky and them wanted to get sober? Fuck no. They didn't want to get sober. That was the last thing. They hated it. I actually said, sobriety is not for everybody. Okay. you should probably go have a drink. You're a miserable fucking person. Okay. That's, so they hated the fact that they were sober and everybody else wasn't. It's in their minds. Okay, they totally hated it. And
now I'm assuming that changed at some point where they were like, "Okay, this ain't so bad." Right?
Well, it changes because you say to yourself, wow, I'm so much better off doing this. You know, and I've had clients that have gone through 4, 5, 6 recoveries for the wrong reasons, and then get sober on their own because they just went, they just woke up and said, that's enough. You know, at some point you have to say, you know, this isn't for me. You know what I mean? This, how do I have to, or you like, in my case, I'm doing cocaine, and, you know, I did blow, you know, we all did blow, but that doesn't mean that much. But I'm just saying that you can't just downplay it and say, you know, everybody was doing it. And that's why I did it. I did it. And finally I said, I was sitting there one day and I was like, when was the last time I had fun doing this? And I couldn't remember one time. There wasn't like a lot of times I was saying I had fun. And I did it a lot with a lot of crazy people. Okay. And all over the world.
I think everybody kind of finds their point where they're like, I've given enough to this. You know, like I've devoted enough money, time, energy.
Well, just like you do on anything you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's, you know, you step out of situations. The problem with the drug concept is if it's addicting, if it is something that's physically addicting and mentally addicting as well, okay, it's hard to physically get it out of your system, mentally and physically. So it's not like you just go, well, you know, I think I'll just lose weight this week. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you really got to focus on what you're doing and have a great time doing it.
Yeah. So Doc, we've got a great question on the screen right now. It says Simmons, I'm assuming Gene, says addiction is selfish. Why does he think that? Or why do you think he thinks that?
Well, because he's never been high in his life. You know, Gene's never done drugs, never had a drink. I think he said one time in the 70s he ate a brownie that might have been laced with something because he didn't feel right.
Yeah.
But other than that, he's never done a drug. So he doesn't have a conception of what addiction is.
Yeah, he doesn't have, which I think a lot of people struggle, right? Like to understand, like, why is this person continuing like this? Why don't they just stop? Like we were talking about earlier. And it's really difficult if you haven't personally experienced someone close to use addiction or their recovery or.
You just think they're losers.
Yeah.
You know, you go, they're losers and, you know, they don't give a shit. They don't care about us. They don't care about themselves. Yeah. All that, you know. They just want to get high and they just want to go do what they're going to do. It's very selfish. Well, it is, but it's a physical addiction that gets you. Nobody wants to have to sleep on bathroom floors and go around and go through garbage cans and steal stuff from your friends and from your parents, from your brothers, your sisters. Steal your kids' toys and sell them. You know what I mean?
So
your kid gets a bike and you sell it so you can buy junk. It's not because you really dig this. It's because you're sick, you know, and you're physically ill. So again, where Gene comes in is he doesn't have enough background into himself, and it's a selfish act. It's like you say, suicide is selfish. Okay, because it affects all the other people around you. You know what I mean? And you just got out of this. Mm-hmm. Well, you're dead though. You know what I mean? It's like that's kind of crazy. You know what I mean? So
you've had like that experience of watching, you know, a lot of people that you worked with, you know, struggle with addiction and get sober, but you've also had that experience with people in your personal life.
Sure.
One of which is on this show right now.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not me. So
Oh, okay. I guess we're talking about me. Yeah. So, you know, Doc and I, we go way back. Doc is my godfather. him and my family, my mom worked for him, my stepdad worked for him. So all these stories that we're talking about, I was there for when I was a kid. And then, luckily, I'm so glad that, during the years that I was out there using, I never looked for Doc. I never tried to talk to him just because, I was busy out there. So he hadn't seen me for probably a good 10, 15 years until I finally got my shit together. And then I reached out to him, and he was there for me and just saying, like, I'm proud of you. I know that you were struggling for a long time, and I'm glad you got your shit together, so. But yeah, being a kid around that stuff, I have to say, was I could see why I might have turned in that direction, because it seemed pretty glamorous from, like, a 5-6-year-old who's seeing all these really cool, successful people like in limousines. I remember seeing topless girls at Doc's penthouse in Miami when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and telling my mom, like, I want to hang out at Doc's a little bit more often, if that's okay. And
I really want to go. I'm not sure why, but I want to go back.
There's just something that's drawing me over there, Mom. Please. Yeah, exactly. But and then seeing the collateral damage from that. A lot of people, there was a musician that you had worked with, Doc, Benny Mardones, who was,
oh my God,
huge talent. He had a song, for those of you who know, it was Into the Night was Benny Mardones' song. And it was a huge hit. You've heard it 100,000 times. It's she was 16 years old.
It was a hit.
Leave her alone.
Yeah.
And this guy had the world. He was poised to be a huge rock star, and just could not get it together. He had this one. Doc, did you ever see the video when Roy Orbison went over to his house and Benny was just completely spun out of his mind, like he was right there on the cusp of fame and having everything that he wanted because he had the talent for it, and then he just self-destructed and it just never made it. And that was really sad to see. And that was probably one of the first things that I remember. No, actually,
I remember. You remember this as how old were you when you watched kind of that happen?
5, 6 years old. I had a pretty
So this is like a core memory for you.
Oh, you want to hear a core memory? So
yeah, let's go.
So Doc was managing Pat Travers' band, who was at one time touring with Aerosmith, and I couldn't have been more than 8 years old at this time. And we went to a couple of their shows to see it, and Steven Tyler fell out on stage. Steven Tyler just passed out on stage. He got carried off. And then as like a 7 or 8 year old, I used to joke around with my mom and Doc and everybody, like, look, I'm Steven Tyler. And I'd fall down and start like going into convulsions and everything. And they thought it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
It was a different time.
It was a different time. So I think that I learned by watching you guys is pretty significant in my life. But yeah, so I saw a lot of shit when I was a kid, a lot of great stuff. And I saw a lot of people just who couldn't get their shit together. And, that always stuck with me.
Well, that's, and again, I believe that in the 90s, it became really, well, number one, the worst thing they did is when they did in the 80s, they did the war on drugs and then made it it was punishing that they were doing to people for pot.
Yeah. Made
everybody stop doing pot and started bringing blow in and everything else. And that's when it started really getting crazy. And that's when it started. And then when the pills started coming, started with Quaaludes, and then from Quaaludes and then to Oxycontin and all the rest of them that were coming up, and we became this pill society. Then when people couldn't get Oxycontin anymore, then they went to methadone and to heroin because because they were drying up on getting Oxycontin and pills. They would have to go to the street. So it was just, I think that's when it really became super addicting. You know, cocaine, when you started smoking it and stuff like that, it became very addicting, but not to the point of what heroin and pills were doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
U.S. drug policy.
Alone, you know.
U.S. drug policy has, in almost every instance, encouraged and made worse the problem that they were trying to fix.
Number one, I don't think they ever want to fix anything for some reason. I don't think they even try to fix things. They try to fix things the way they want them to be. And they want to tell you what to watch and what to do and how to do it. And they don't know what to do. And they've never done it. So it's really. We
could go down a rabbit hole on this one, Doc.
Yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole, but I'm just saying
we try not to be too political on this show. We try to keep it about recovery.
I'm not political at all because I'm not a Democrat and I'm not a Republican.
Oh no, but I would get real rowdy with it. I'm more worried about where I would go with this.
Yeah, I believe I'm just a patriot. That's it. Yeah.
So we've only got a few minutes left before we wrap it up here, Doc. So I'd like to go ahead and call out to the audience. You know, now's your chance if you've got some questions that you'd like to run by Doc. I know I missed a couple in the chat that we didn't.
Tommy Hanna chimed in, old friend of the family, and Doc. So hey, Tommy, good to see you on there, buddy.
Let's see. Give everybody a chance to get some questions in. Patches for pooches. Yep, we talked about that.
Well, I guess we could do a rapid fire question.
Oh, do you have some questions?
It's rapid fire question time.
All right, Doc, this is the rapid fire question. Are you ready?
Yeah.
What was your first concert?
Stevie Wonder. Good nickel.
Is there any artist that you passed on working with that you wish you hadn't?
I wish I hadn't. I hadn't passed on.
Correct.
Black Crowes, Rage Against the Machine.
Oh, yeah, okay. You messed up on Rage.
Wow. Well, we could go another hour on just this stuff. All right. Best decade for music.
Me?
Yeah.
60s and 70s to me.
Okay. When was the last time you played guitar?
Probably about a couple of years ago on the road. I'll play sometimes in the backstage, or I'll, fool around on sound check or something like that.
Okay. And here's a good one for you. What was the last concert that you paid to get into?
Adele.
Yeah.
Okay.
Adele.
All right. That's it for the rapid fire questions. That was great. Thank you.
That's how you know an artist is really big. When Doc McGhee had to pay for a ticket to get it.
If I paid for it, yeah.
We got one question. I don't know if this is a serious question. Someone said, what was it like working with Scooby Doo? Did you ever work with Scooby Doo?
Yeah, I did Kiss Scooby Doo. I was Chip Magoo in the movie.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I was Chip Magoo. And you know what's crazy about that? Kids come to, because we have a lot of kids that come to the show, right? And so they'll be backstage and I'll have like a 6 or 7 year old, right? And kids will watch a movie 100 times.
Absolutely.
Right.
Okay. They just watch it over and over and over. And some kid, the parents will say, I just have to tell you, my son has watched Scooby Doo 100 times. And the kid will be standing there kind of shy and just say, but that's Chip Magoo. And the kid will look up and go, almost tear up and go, that's not Chip Magoo. Because
just let him know.
Because they only know Chip Magoo from the movie, but it's my voice that's, as far
and then they get it. Here's another one. Someone said, any advice on how to link up recovery coaches with touring musicians trying to stay sober on the road? Or I guess just linking up musicians with resources anywhere, right?
Do it every day. I mean, just set up, meetings, in towns. Every time wherever you go, there's meetings. And there's usually musician meetings. The promoter can find the ones where, because, most of the artists don't want to go to a regular meeting, not because they don't like the people, but because they can't identify with them.
Yeah.
And then people are enamored with them. So it's not really fun for them at all. They need to have somebody that can say, hey, I walked down this path, and they know, and then they can talk about it. So we can get and have and do set up meetings for people that are in recovery every day down in every city in the world. There's plenty of meetings to go to, believe me.
Everywhere. And I'll go ahead and shout out Anders Osborne and Christopher O'Shea down in New Orleans have started a program called Send Me a Friend, where musicians can call in anywhere they are in the U.S. and they have like a list of people across the country who are in the industry, who are willing to go out to wherever to be there to support someone who's on the road. So,
and something, there's people like Joe Walsh and stuff like that they'll go anywhere for people. I mean, they truly will go anywhere for people. You don't have to be a musician. You know yourself when you're in recovery and you've drank the punch. Okay.
Can we go ahead and throw Joe Walsh's phone number up on the screen for everybody in case anyone out there is needing support?
I can't throw Joe's number up there, but yeah. But
you've got it.
When I had a problem with an artist, he called. He had heard about it, and he called me and said, if you need it, I'm there. I'd be happy,
I got one more rapid fire question for you, which I think you're probably the best person to ask this to. Who is the most famous person in your cell phone right now?
Oh, wow.
My wife. Probably.
Good answer. Good answer.
Yeah.
That's why he has the longevity in his business.
Yeah, there you go. Good job. So Doc, we're wrapping things up, but being that this is probably the biggest platform you've ever been on, that you're reaching the most people you've ever had the chance to reach on.
Yeah, he was really nervous going in. He was really nervous going in the waiting room.
I mean, we get dozens of streams every week. You don't even know. Is there anything else you'd like to say as like one last parting thought to the folks who are out there who are maybe struggling themselves or have a loved one who's struggling? Anything last thing you'd like to say to them before we close out?
Yeah, I don't know what to say to people other than, have fun with your life, and that isn't fun. You have to enjoy your life, and you will never enjoy your life in this, and nobody has. And when you get that off your back, and you guys have done it, okay, it's so refreshing. It's so, every day is you wake up and you have things you can do, not that you need to do, that you have to go do to keep yourself from being sick.
Yeah.
It's a whole different world, is all I can say to people. And if you have a problem, just call a support thing and go sit in there and tell the truth. And the best thing is, if you don't go into a program and talk to people, you will never stay sober. I can tell you that, ever. I've never seen anybody be able to do it, ever. If you get a good support team, or you get just a person, you don't have to go into rehab. You may have to go to rehab because to detox and to get your mind set on what it is. Okay. And if you can't do it, then go to rehab and really get good. But if you get in a program, if you go into some place and say, I want help, they will help you, and they will walk you through the programs, and they will get you, they'll get you right again. I mean, they'll be by your side to do it.
There's millions of us. There's millions of us all over the country who are willing to do just that.
Exactly. I say it all the time. All you have to do is ask for help, and you'll be amazed. There will be people just coming from every different direction who are going to want to help you. So
I think
out of the proverbial woodwork.
I mean, people, yeah, that's the problem. There's a stigma about being, and nobody wants to really ask for help because they think that nobody knows that they're fucked up. Okay, that's the funniest.
We've all been there.
Yeah. So, but if I could say to anybody, if it's affecting your life and it's affecting other people's lives, whatever you're doing, get out of it. Go get help to get out of whatever you're doing. That's the hardest part is no matter what it is. You know what I mean? To go get help in whatever area that is, because people are out there to help you.
Well, thank you, Doc. Thank you for your time with us. Thank you for sharing some stories and some wisdom and all that.
You guys do good work and keep it up. And I hope that the next time I'm on, you have 2 more people on this.
Oh yeah, that's the goal.
No, you're more than enough, Doc. We could probably do a couple more hours with you.
Yeah,
we can just talk about Rage Against the Machine. As always, I'm your host, Joseph Gordo, reminding you to like, follow, and share. Thank you to Jason. Thank you, Doc McGhee, so much for coming out. And as we like to say here on Talksicology, there's 1,000 ways in and there's 1,000 ways out. We hope you find yours.
Good point.